Hello all, it's Mr. Roddy, and we are going to do a quick set of video notes on Angel Island. And these notes, as well as the questions that you'll be receiving, are part 2 of your Blizzard bag information. Part 1 was finishing the notes on Ellis Island. Part 2 is Angel Island. You want to make sure that you have answered all of the questions associated both with Ellis Island and Angel Island on your guided note sheet, as well as on Google Classroom. You will see those questions also on Google Classroom to answer. So let's delve into Angel Island. So the video notes questions are directions in 2 to 3 complete sentences. Please answer each of the following questions on your guided note sheet. So let's take a look at those 5 questions themselves. When was Ellis Island open? How many immigrants were processed here? How did immigrants find ways around the Chinese Exclusion Act? Why were American laborers scared of the Chinese immigrants? How were Chinese immigrants treated on Angel Island? What were they subjected to? How is Angel Island similar or different than Ellis Island? And I apologize that on your guided note sheet there is a misspelling for this last question, but how it is laid out here in the video notes is correct. So, on Angel Island, approximately 175,000 Chinese immigrants are processed here. They are processed on Angel Island between 1910 and 1940. Angel Island sits in San Francisco Bay and is the checkpoint for all immigrants of Chinese descent coming to the United States at this time frame, as well as many, many Asian immigrants coming into our country. Although we see other immigrants, such as the Japanese, coming to Ellis Island and being processed there, they were rarely detained because of the treaties that we had with Japan. However, the Chinese were a different story, and while they were detained on Angel Island, Chinese immigrants would carve poetry into their barracks, and you can see this picture of some of the poetry that would be carved into their barracks on Angel Island. So, Chinese immigration. Circumventing the Chinese Exclusion Act became the first order of concern for many Chinese, and we want to get down these bolded portions for us. We only allowed into our country exempt statuses from China. Those exempt statuses included merchants, clergy, diplomats, teachers, students, and other exempt classes as we determined when they arrived. So, many Chinese would resort to buying false identities at great cost, which allowed them to immigrate either as children of exempt classes or children of natives. So they would try and come to our country as either a child to someone who already immigrated to the United States, or as a child of someone who was native to the United States. They would definitely try and go around that Chinese Exclusion Act as many times as possible. Here we can see different Chinese immigrants being processed for their medical exam, and again, you can see the inspector here with the button hook rolling back those eyelids to check for trachoma. You can see another doctor here performing possibly some other tests with those objects in front of them as well. So we can see that as immigrants had to wait on Angel Island, they would have to suffer from long and painstaking waits. But American laborers, again, resented these Chinese. So Americans did not care how long it took for the Chinese to be processed, because we understood that the Chinese were willing to take American jobs for cheaper wages And we would accuse the Chinese for monopolizing any job that would come open. So the United States passes stiff immigration laws like those Chinese Exclusion and Oriental Exclusion Acts that we talked about in class the other day. Many Chinese immigrants were forced to prove that they had a husband or father here in the United States so that they could stay in the United States. Here we can see a detention building on Angel Island where Chinese immigrants would be housed. And you would come down each day for a different exam, whether it be mental, medical, or legal, to be performed to you. And if you didn't pass, then again you stayed until you did, or until they put you back on one of the boats to send you home. So again, from 1910 to 1940, many of the Chinese immigrants are detained and interrogated at Angel Island. U.S. officials hope to deport as many as possible. They would ask obscure questions like, where is the rice pot kept in your house? And if you said in the corner of the room, they would ask behind the door. Well, again, these aren't true houses. These are makeshift houses or tents with no doors oftentimes. So they would ask very obscure, very vague questions purposefully. Men and women would be housed separately. Detainees spent much of their time in the barracks themselves, like we took a look at. And they would languish in between these interrogations, and that's where they would take that time to carve the Chinese poetry into the walls of the detention centers. Here we can see, again, a legal exam or a mental exam taking place. Here we can see a medical exam taking place, and again, that long wait for us. So, again, this is part 2 of your Blizzard bag, is this video notes. Part 1 was us finishing up the notes on Ellis Island. Part 2 is Angel Island. So, in 2 to 3 sentences, please answer each of the following questions in Google Classroom. When was Angel Island open? How many immigrants were processed here? How did immigrants find ways around the Chinese Exclusion Act? Why were American laborers scared of the Chinese immigrants? How were Chinese immigrants treated on Angel Island, and what were they subjected to? How was Angel Island similar or different than Ellis Island? So again, we think about that last question, in particularly those long waits, those exams themselves really show how closely related these two islands were. However, housing men and women separately is different than how Ellis Island oftentimes housed entire families. So you really want to think of that last question, and again, I apologize for the spelling mistake on your guided note sheet, but you really want to think long and hard about those comparisons and contrasts between Angel and Ellis Island. I will post up on Classroom both videos separately. For folks, I will post up the guided note sheet with each video, and I will post up the questions as well that would go with each video. Okay? Again, both videos, the notes, and those questions are all a part of your Blizzard bag for today. Okay? Again, if folks have questions, please feel free to email me anytime. I'm more than happy to help. Blizzard bags are due 2 days after the Blizzard bag day. Therefore, these notes must be on your guided note sheet and completed by Wednesday. All questions must be answered on Google Classroom by Wednesday as well. Okay? So you really want to make sure that you've taken all the notes, You've answered all the questions on your guided note sheet. You've answered all the questions on Google Classroom, because both of these videos, again, are your Blizzard bag for this Blizzard bag day. Okay? I hope folks enjoy their Blizzard bag day, and again, if you need me, email me. Thank you. Have a good one and enjoy.